haven't done a dedicated video reviewing a theory for I want to say over a year, but with the new hosts of Game Theory stepping into their roles, I thought it was only fitting to do one to kind of wish them good luck. But just because I wish them well doesn't mean I'll be giving them a pass. It's time to hold some feet to the fire and see how well they did. And I'd love to cover all of them, but frankly, I only feel qualified to talk about the Poppy Playtime one. I was gonna do the leg shaving one, but I haven't done that in like 5 years, so I don't really remember my experience. So Tom, I hope you can handle the heat, or it's time to get out of the kitchen. Slices, put on your aprons, and let's see if this man can cook. And I should mention before I get too deep into this, obviously, all the new hosts of Game Theory have been working with Game Theory for many, many years. None of these theories are their first theories. It's just the first ones they've hosted. Regardless, what was the Poppy Playtime theory that Tom presented as his first game theory? Or in his words, it's time to find out if what we see will defy expectations. Eat your heart out, Tom. Well, it goes into a lot, and you probably should watch that video if you haven't yet, but I have a feeling a lot of you have. Regardless, I'm not going to go over every evidence piece and point here, because I don't want to just recap the whole video. Watch it if you haven't. For clarity though, I'll go over some major points. The centerpiece, I feel, is that the prototype isn't trying to free the toys from the factory. The prototype is trying to bring the entire factory down, toys included. It wants to bury all of this. And one of the major pieces of evidence used are the death messages we see, where they say things like, "This all needs to be forgotten," and stuff like that. Furthermore, he posits that the prototype is a character we've seen a bit of, Rich. We hear about Rich on at least one tape in each chapter of the game, so he's important enough to be warranted. Some evidence he uses to support this theory is that Rich seems to genuinely care about the children, even being against the condition of the play care before he knows about the experiment. So since he was up for a promotion to Stu's job, Rich would have been informed about what was going on about the experiments on his promotion, and possibly once he found out, he would have been against it, possibly threatening to go to the press or something. Pretty much any time somebody dissents from Playtime Co., they silence them. We saw what happened with the ARG employee. This silencing would have likely been being turned into the prototype. Rich himself is described as a good man, but with a horrible temper, which lines up with what we know about the prototype, something that wants to help the children here, but is prone to violence. Which this tendency would line up with this idea that the prototype's plan is to bring down the whole factory. Logically, it does make sense. If the experiments did break out of the factory, they would only be put into a new laboratory. Furthermore, the toys could have feasibly escaped any time after the Hour of Joy, but they still haven't. Even more so, the prototype has had multiple chances to kill us, but it hasn't. I actually bring this up for a different reason, but I'll get into that later. So that's a pretty quick but major summary of the theory that was presented by Tom. So what's great and not great about it? Now, before I really dig into this theory, and I bring this up every time I do this, but it's worth bringing up every time, none of this video is meant to hate on the original theory. All of this is my opinion. I'm not going to be like, oh, my theory is correct and theirs is incorrect. That's not the point of this. Furthermore, any of you in my audience decide to take this video and go, okay, I should go to the original video and say, haha, you're wrong, or do any kind of hateful, annoying shit, I do not claim you as part of my audience. You do not belong here. The only kind of comment that I would ever want you to leave my video to go on another person's video to leave would be positive. Show some support. Say how good of a job they did. That is it. Especially right now with the Theorists. I'm sure it's a stressful time over there. The last thing they need is some annoying 14-year-olds in the comments being like, actually, you're wrong because Raito said this. Shut the hell up. That being said, this isn't even going to be a debunk video. There isn't really any major error in this theory. The nature of Poppy Playtime and where we're currently at in the lore, it's hard to make a full theory and be wrong. As long as you're adhering to the evidence, you're going to have to do a lot of speculation. It's similar to Five Nights at Freddy's in that vein. The most I'm going to be doing here is proposing my speculation counter to their speculation and trying to make an argument on why mine is more likely. That's all we really can do with the evidence we have. One of the speculations that Tom made that I actually do like is that Rich is the prototype. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I haven't even thought about it until I watched the game theory, but the more I think about it, the more things start to line up. Where we begin to differ is the prototype's true goal. I understand the idea of wanting to bury the factory forever, and I think it is the noble cause and most likely the true ending of what's going to happen in Poppy Playtime. But I don't know if that's the prototype's current goal. After all, I feel like the prototype is more than capable of doing it itself. It was able to steer all the toys into a factory-wide rebellion. Surely it could, like, destroy a few support beams and have it all collapse on itself. Why would it need us to destroy the factory? Sure, I hear you. Maybe it just wants to make sure we're in the factory and we die too, so nobody who worked there is still alive. That being said, why didn't it just kill us when we got there? Sure, maybe we're just so good at what we're doing and we're dodging every toy that comes our way, but in instances like the end of the catnap boss fight, when we're on our back, unarmed and dazed from an explosion, if the prototype wanted to kill us, it could have killed us very easily right then, but it didn't. So the prototype wants us alive for something. It's just not clear what. Furthermore, if it does want to destroy the factory and it can't do it by itself, surely it would want as many loyal followers as possible. So why would it go and kill the most loyal follower it has, Catnap? There is a possibility that it was going to die anyway from the fire. So maybe this was a mercy killing. But if it's not, why the hell did he do it? And finally, sort of a blind spot in the theory, what about Elliot Ludwig? Don't get me wrong, the theory goes into Elliot Ludwig and how he's probably not as innocent as we think, and that he's definitely not the prototype. And the prototype thing is a fair argument. I've never seen the evidence that was brought up of a picture that included Mommy Longlegs addressed to Elliot Ludwig. If that is true, like that pretty much guarantees he wasn't the original prototype. The prototype came before Mommy Longlegs. And I understand their points to that Elliot isn't as innocent as we thought he was, but I don't buy that argument. The remains found on Elliot Ludwig's property seem like a misdirect to me. After all, it was a duffel bag of body parts found at his address after he died. If the remains were there because of the Bigger Body Initiative, why were they at his house and not the factory? Furthermore, why would they have just been left at his property so long that it remained there after he died? To me, this duffel bag feels more like a smear tactic or a way to expose what Playtime Co. was doing. Honestly, I'd argue that Rich would be a candidate to leave it at his property, but if Rich is the prototype, he'd be dead before this happened. So if those are my problems with the theory, what do I think is more likely? Well, to delve into that, we should go over the prototype. One of the strangest parts about the prototype to me is that it seems like it's just a hand and arm, which that can't be true. At least not of the time that we're currently playing in-game. Sure, every image we see of it is just a hand, and every time we see it in-game, it's just that hand. And the one, first story we get of it where it builds a laser pointer out of an alarm clock to trip a camera and then hides, so when the camera comes back on they think it escaped, so somebody goes inside and then they close the door because it was there and then it kills the guy. A hand and arm could feasibly do that. But if it's just like the arm and hand, how is it doing the stuff we see in game? How would it reach out behind doors, slink down from the ceiling? Where does it talk from? Does it literally just like meep, 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 meep? That'd be really funny, but I don't think it does. I take it back. I really want the prototype to just be like, so you've made it to my lair. That'd be really funny. Anyway, maybe it started out as just the hand and arm. Clearly it isn't anymore. And while we're talking about hands, a little mini theory here. I don't think it's an accident that all we've seen of the prototype is a hand. Think about the main tool we use throughout Poppy Playtime, the grab pack, essentially extendable hands. I have a feeling hands are very important to Poppy Playtime, and I wonder if part of the prototype is a grab pack. I don't know, just a thought. I just don't think it's an accident that the only tool we use is hand shape, and the only thing we've seen from the main villain is a hand. So what does the prototype look like? Are you good? What are you doing? You're so weird. It's just put your butt down. Well, we have the shrine that Catnap made, and sure, probably not entirely accurate, but it's gotta at least be similar, right? So why would that matter? If the shrine is at all accurate and there is a human body at the center of the prototype, you would think that the body would be its primary consciousness. But if the prototype truly started out as just this hand, then the consciousness would have to be in that hand. So then whose body would this be? And if that body was added after the fact, was its consciousness added as well? The prototype does refer to itself as we very often. So here's my theory, one that I think is slightly more likely than the one Tom presented. I agree that it seems most likely that when Rich was promoted to Stu's position, he found out about what was really going on at Playtime Co. And when he opposed it, he was silenced. being turned into the prototype. It's their first successful experiment, but all they're able to create is an arm and a hand. It's not huge and incredibly complex, but it is a living, conscious thing made out of a human. It's a success. They continue these experiments and get better every time, but Rich never forgets what's going on and never stops fighting against it. And as the prototype, it seems like he escapes fairly often. Maybe at first and then eventually is captured, it's hard to tell, but he was able to plan the Hour of Joy, something that required literally every toy to be in on. And we know that as the prototype, he visited Theo, the boy who was eventually turned into Catnap. The workers at the factory thought Theodore Gramble was talking to his imaginary friend, but we see in his drawings and later confirmed that he wasn't talking to an imaginary friend, he was talking to the prototype. The prototype was trying to goad Theo into using a grab pack to opening a maintenance store. That way all the orphans could escape. But when Theo does it, he's electrocuted and the plan fails. The prototype even gives himself up to the scientists to bring Theo to them to save him. Okay, God, there was so much fur on me. So if the prototype was talking to Theo this whole time, unless it has some weird telepathic powers that we don't know of, it would have had to make its way to Theo to talk to him. And even if you want to argue that the prototype was able to mentally connect to every single toy in the facility to plan the Hour of Joy and able to mentally connect to Theo to talk to him directly, the prototype still would have had to physically be there to rescue Theo from dying of electrocution and bringing him to the scientists. So it seems most likely that the prototype was just kind of sneaking around and talking to everything it could. So if the prototype is able to escape being captured, what if the Hour of Joy wasn't its first plan? After all, how do you stop a raging monster? You cut off its head. Elliot Ludwig. It seems possible and even likely the prototype escaped capture and originally attacked Elliot Ludwig. And if he didn't manage to kill Elliot Ludwig, we have evidence that this company knows how to save somebody from being dead, turning them into a toy. After all, we have confirmation that they did this for an employee who volunteered, Thomas Clark. He's the guy who's turned into Braun in that one trailer that came out that made everybody go, oh shit, Mob Entertainment isn't fucking around anymore. Furthermore, if they wanted to keep studying the prototype, they possibly would have looked into ways to make it more docile, or at least more agreeable. The doctor might have seen this as a way to kill 3 birds with 1 stone. What if we save Elliot Ludwig, make the prototype calmer and more approachable, and get all of your key cards? Bam Bam fans, are you happy? That's the most I'm going to talk about your franchise. But what if the experiment was to combine Elliot Ludwig with the prototype? Hopefully then the prototype would take on the memory and personality of Elliot Ludwig, not this angry man that we've had to deal with this whole time. But instead, the result was the prototype we know today, one of 2 minds. One mind willing to do whatever it takes to bring this factory to the ground, and the other mind willing to give itself up for the life of 1 child. Cut to today, I still think the inversion of its experiments, or the true goal of the prototype. Why would the prototype call a human here, allow it to make its way all the way down, killing its biggest and strongest supporters along the way, keeping us alive? Because the prototype was the first human to be turned into a toy. And with our help, or rather, what we have that it doesn't, the prototype plans to be the first toy turned back into a human. And that is why it's allowing us to kill every supporter it has on the way down. It's clearing a path for its way back up. So my final verdict, it's a great theory. Like I said, there's no outright mistakes or things they missed. It really just comes down to disagreements on the speculation. Either are entirely valid, and there's probably more than a few people who think my theory is even more outlandish because of the whole 2 minds in 1 toy thing and wanting to turn back into a human. I don't know. I think it's legitimately just down to preference at this point. So hats off to Tom and the rest of the hosts of the new theory channels. Y'all are doing a great job so far. Keep at it. And in the meantime, if you are tired of all the Poppy Playtime talk, this is literally the first non-FNAF video in like 2 months. So go watch the playlist on the timeline that I'm building to get a good sense of FNAF. If you want your fan art featured on the channel, make sure to share it with #RightTart. A huge shout out to the best channel members, the Dough Risers. And until next time, as always, stay toasty, slices.